John Sayles says no war but the class war. Lucas and I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. And on a monthly basis, I also talk about movies with Lucas from Strike the Sun MD or The Bits of Lit, whatever he is calling himself as of late. We're talking about a good one this month. But Lucas, how are you doing first? How was your experience?
With the movie, it was pretty good. It was a movie I'd never heard of. And I was not ready to feel violent anger toward James Earl Jones, but his character turned the corner. So we can forgive. But it was an interesting experience. It felt like truly a hidden gem type of movie. I don't think I was as dazzled as you were by the movie, but I can't really complain about anything. Nothing stood out to me as like not good. Just yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it didn't wow me as much as maybe it did you.
Yeah, okay, yeah, a little bit of a difference of opinion there. But to clarify to everyone out there, we are talking about Matewan, something like that, which was made in 1987, directed and written by John Sayles, starring Chris Cooper in his acting debut, which is cool, James Earl Jones, who is a big deal, and Mary McDonnell. It should be noted that James Earl Jones, he died recently. This is one of the many roles in his career. But the reason I found out about this movie is because some people on Twitter, or X, if you're calling it that, which I don't, they had mentioned this movie after he died, as a pretty good movie, and I looked into it, and it was like, this seems like an interesting movie to talk about for this movie thing. So that's really how we ended up here. And like there does seem to be a little bit of a difference of opinion there. I think we're both sort of like rile up in anti-capitalist kind of fervor with it, I consider you a good comrade, especially with you there in China, and I think it's a movie that you don't see a lot these days. Uh,
Mm.
Especially because like big business interests control Hollywood, and they're not interested in talking about these necessary type of movies. And this a brief summary. This is a movie about a coal strike in Matewan, West Virginia, and a Union man shows up, very similar to what happens in Dubious Battle, one of my favorite Steinbeck books, and everything proceeds to happen from there. So anything to add, Lucas?
Yeah, I personally just really enjoyed Chris Cooper in the movie. I didn't know it was his debut. But when I was watching, I was like, oh my God, I've seen this guy so many times before. What is his name? What is his name? That's really interesting that it's his debut. Definitely, this made me think of oh my God, you just said it. I'm thinking Grapes of Wrath, the Steinbeck. What is it called? What did you just say? Not
In
Grapes of
Dubious
Wrath.
Battle, yeah.
Thank you. In Dubious Battle. Uh, yeah, I think while I was watching it, I had In Dubious Battle in my mind the whole time because Chris Cooper plays the same kind of role, but doesn't quite get as dark as the instigator in that book, in that story. Uh, which is what I was kind of hoping for, but they're different stories, and this is based something that actually happened. So I can accept that. But I really enjoyed Chris Cooper. I think James Earl Jones did not have enough to do.
Mhm.
He was just kind of there. Um, the housekeeper woman who was tormented throughout this movie by the capitalist pigs, um, to lie about Joe saying some terrible things. She was pretty good, and I liked the police chief. One of the few times I thought, yeah, this cop, he's pretty one of the good cops.
Yeah, my issue is that it did seem like the sheriff, like that's not how the sheriff would have actually acted, because the police rarely sided with uh,
Mm,
the unions. But at the same time, like in West Virginia, especially with like I believe he was in McCoy or Hatfield or something like that. And so
mm,
I do think those good old boys who've been there in that region for years upon years, like for generations even, like they would have more connection with that region, with that city, than
yeah,
they would with the corporate bosses. So
yeah. He
that
was a
that, that
Hatfield, by the way. You were right. Yeah, he was a Hatfield.
mhm.
Not going
And
to be as trusting of rich city slicker outsiders, especially the cartoonish level of villainy that these guys with their like, my face is not going to do it, but just like, get away, peasant, and die. I mean, they don't say that, but that's literally their behavior at all times, which I guess is like it's kind of cartoony watching it in a movie, but not inaccurate.
yeah, especially with all the strikes that we've seen in recent history, the way
Mm,
that like Amazon reacted to people trying to form a union there,
yeah.
it does seem kind of cartoonish, but also those companies are behaving in cartoonish ways.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the way they acted, or the performance of the actors, or even the writing of it. It's just kind of like it feels silly to watch someone so cartoonishly evil, and then actually that's what they are.
hmm Well, we can move into talking about the movie now with like just going through it, but like it deals with a coal mining strike in Matewan. It takes a while for them to sort of accept a union, but they decide to go forward with that. And the company, the coal mining company does not want that, and so they're not accepting the union. And At the beginning of the movie, a train is heading into Matewan, and Joe is on that train. The train is stopped, and a bunch of black men are told to get off. It turns out that those black men are scabs, which is not really well reflected in this sort of strike that's going on. And those black men are told to get off, and a big fight ensues between the coal miners and the black men. James Earl Jones is there. We're introduced to him, and he fights off some of these like these union men, and then like the train heads into town at last, which you see that initial conflict. And something that is very prominent in this movie is the issue of race, because black men are brought in, who like they haven't had that many opportunities, most likely, especially
Yep.
given the time period. And like this might be an opportunity to make a little bit more money, but like it's a bit of a challenge because again this strike is going on. And so you see like the company just trying to create a bit of a race war to distract from the class war.
Yeah, they not only do they bring in black people, which would only black people on that first train, which would immediately piss off all these hardworking guys who want a union to protect themselves, who are all white from this place. But they also bring in the dreaded foreigner, Italians, uh, who at this time in America were not white, essentially. They
Hmm.
were not part of the accepted white hegemony in like white supremacist culture of the day. So they have their tricks. These wily bandits, known as capitalists, to distract, divide, and conquer. But if you're a real union man, as Joe says in one of the meetings early on, then you will accept everyone in this room and you will not neglect anyone or otherwise fall apart. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit.
Hmm.
But as Joe said a little bit later, when the scabs come to meet, you cannot deny these people if you truly want a union. You have to be united, which is the point of the union.
Essentially, like if you don't have everyone as part of the union, it's not going to be strong,
Yep.
which is something that for the history of unions has always been a problem because
Yep.
uh, if you if you view like people of color as the enemy, like you're not going to want to include them. But if they're not included, uh, then you're not going to really gain anything because those people are going to be scabs, and you're going to have a bit that kind of problem. So it's a struggle, but as many people have pointed out, their class solidarity needs to be a thing because the people on the top have class solidarity, but the people on the bottom are constantly being told that members of their class are only out to take from them. No, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I suppose this is a good point to mention uh, Danny, I think was his name, the young blonde boy who's a preacher.
With the big mouth.
Yeah, big
Um,
mouth and big teeth.
yeah, Danny is a very fascinating character, um, kind of using religion as a way of promoting union values. He's allowed to speak at the church, and he also is living where at the house where Joe lets, where Joe is leasing a room at. And I think one of the lines that he says is, "We get born and we got to take it from here or take it from there," which is a very powerful line, I think. But he's actively working, but I think he's sort of being manipulated by others in the story too.
Yeah, definitely. And also, he is sort of competing for the hearts and minds of his congregation because he's not the only pastor. There is a much older gentleman who is like, somewhere in the Bible it says that communists are the devil, or
Yeah.
the Union Man, which is a little bit on the I think probably realistic to the time, I would guess. Um, in some ways for certain Christians, or like pastors, maybe, but does feel again a little bit cartoonish uh, for the sort of people on the wrong side of history being like so openly like these people who want their rights suck. They're terrible. Jesus hates them. Yeah, I mean his language is quite strong, and again, is probably realistic to the time, at least the sentiment. Uh, but it feels funny watching it in a movie. But that's just me watching it 40 years later or 35 years later and 100 years after the fact of the events. Uh,
Hmm.
when they have that meeting where James Earl Jones, Few Clothes, I believe was his name,
Hmm.
comes in to all the guys who the meeting with all the union men, and they are about to start trouble before Joe says we need to accept everybody. Um, Shortly after that, we see somebody. We don't know who at this time, but somebody is an informant, and they are writing a letter to the capitalists who own the mine and are profiting, and they're informing of a potential red who is a communist, basically rabble rouser, who is Joe.
Yeah,
After,
it's a betrayal that deeply affects the movie going forward. And in hindsight, I should have seen like who that was. It's CE. It's the character of CE,
yeah,
who is I don't remember who he's played by, but he's played by the guy who plays the prison warden in Shawshank Redemption.
yeah,
My thought was like, wow, this guy is a decent character here. That feels out of place. And it turns out that he is once again a lowly rat man who does evil things to people.
yeah. He's very good at being a less than a dog, shall we say? But after that, the dare I say comic relief of the movie shows up. I'm
The
just
company
kidding.
men,
Yes.
they who are just complete asshats and like
Yeah.
they had mustaches to twirl, they'd be twirling it like Snyder
Yeah,
Whiplash.
that's literally what they are. I mean, the one chunkier one, chubbier one, sorry. He just has this shit-eating grin on his face at all times, and you truly like good on that actor. Like every single moment he was on screen, not just with what he said, but just his face made me want to punch him
But I
because of
think I
that.
like it does seem kind of cartoonish, like in comic relief, but at the same time, like these men know they can be openly evil because they'll never face any consequences.
Yeah, the sick and twisted thing about it is that, as expected, and as I guess history would probably show, uh, the company didn't just the capitalists didn't just own the mines; they own everything in the town. I forget what that term is. Like when
Company
a
town. Yeah.
yeah, company town. Thank you. Right in the name. Yeah, it's basically Matewan is a company town, and these people who are fighting desperately, or striking desperately, have everything going against them. And these two, one of them is like, yeah, just has this shit-eating grin and constantly just like bow down to me, you dogs. And the other one is sort of aggressive and ready to kill everyone at a moment's notice.
Right,
And
right.
everything he says is not even a veiled threat. It's just like, you want trouble, mister? Because we'll give you trouble. Anyway,
Yeah, they
uh,
try to evict people, and the sheriff is standing up to them and is like, get a warrant. You can't do this.
yep,
That's not going to hold up in court. And he makes some of the men like deputies as a way to stand up to them, which I thought was a very wholesome moment in the movie.
yep. That was pretty good. That actor, who I don't know who that actor is, but I've seen him in a couple things too from the 90s. Uh, I kind of wish he had a bigger part, but anyway, uh, is it at this point that they're getting evicted or getting kicked out or something, and they make like their own little
Hmm.
not hideout, but in the forests in West Virginia near in Matewan, they make their own little encampment. That's the word I'm looking for. where they have stolen company goods, which is the morally correct thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what they've done. They stand up to the company by throwing down their shovels, and then the company tries to buy the sheriff, um,
Mm.
and the mayor, which both say no, and they're like, you will regret this. But again, like they can be openly evil, they can openly try to commit crimes because they own the town, and the government and both the state and federal government are probably going to side with them when push comes to shove. But the workers, have formed this encampment, which is meant to protect one another, which is true. It's something found in history.
Yeah, yeah. And this is when the action really starts taking place because well, before we get into any of the action, I believe around this time Joe starts telling them about how the strike is going to work and what kind of outside support that they have, which is basically very little.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because this isn't the only strike going on in America. And, I believe one was happening in Kansas City at the time, or Kansas at least. And there were a couple other ones mentioned that I'm forgetting right now. And so money is going to be stretched pretty thin. Resources are going to be tight. They still have to, at this point, get the Italians and the black scabs to join them. Hasn't happened yet. But I believe at this time, one of the members of the union men asks, like, what happens if they think we'll fail? Uh, which in dubious battle certainly answers. But this one, Joe can't let them lose hope, so he just ignores that and deflects the question. But if it was a losing battle, they would just move on, I guess, which through that deflection, I think is the, implication there. Because he's not trying to stay there for good, right? It's not like he
Mm-hmm.
wants to live there. He's agitating and organizing, um, which I guess, is kind of a nice way of showing the sort of dark side of this sort of organization effort. Like, if things aren't going to happen, if this isn't going to work out, it's a lot, and it's a lost cause. All the work that these guys have done, or lack of work, I guess, by striking, um, all this organization, uh, has been for naught, and will be discarded, so that they will focus on where they can actually make something happen, win battles elsewhere. uh, which is not even necessarily a criticism,
Yeah.
but is a nice, like, yeah, there's an ugly side to this.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. The cause is righteous, but at the end of the day, like you see that the movie does a very good job of exploring this sort of interpersonal kind of struggle where Joe wants to help these people. He wants to further the cause of the unions that he's working for, but at the same time, like these people have to live here after Joe is gone. He won't always be there, as you said, and so like Joe is constantly dealing with that fact that he's hurting these people. He's leaving them worse off because some people are dying, and even one person says to him, like you're focused on getting your union here, but most of us we can't see past this holler, which is a profound line. Like most of these people will never leave this city, will never leave West Virginia. Maybe won't ever leave this mine, this coal mine that they're working at. Uh,
Mm.
but Joe will, and the people will have to deal with the mess that he left them. And so it's a real struggle. Like you have to help these people, but at the same time, if you push it too far, everything is going to change in a way that no one's really going to be happy with.
Yeah. Uh, anyway, there's a nighttime shootout.
Hmm.
Or did I skip ahead too far?
No,
I
no,
think not. Yeah.
that's a good point or a good.
Who knows who it could be? No idea. It's a big mystery. Still trying to figure out who it was. No idea.
Yeah, if they fire on the camp and then they start to like defend the surrounding woods.
Yeah, somebody
Uh,
gets hurt, but nobody dies. I forget who gets hurt, but somebody got hurt.
mm,
Uh, the next day, some suspicious looking capitalist pigs walk in and say, "Boy, howdy, there was a lot of noise out here." Very suspicious. This is sort of when like the capitalist assholes are becoming more aggressive in their violent actions, but also their subterfuge. Like when they tell the subleaser lady, this is a little bit later, but they start spreading lies about Joe,
hmm.
and start spreading those to not only her but to other members who are more susceptible and weak, uh, to try and turn them around. And you start to see the Union men never turn on Joe, but start to exclude him from conversations and kind of side eye him and things like this. And you can really feel Joe's concern that he's losing this, and this will be a lost cause. But that's kind of jumping ahead to all the other points where that happens. After the shootout, I think there's a. Oh, is that when the hunters come?
Yeah, the people
Nice.
who used to have a lot of land but lost it because of the company.
Yeah, please do go on.
Yeah, there's like going to be a big fight, but they show up and they kind of scare off the company men a little bit, and like they offer some support to the union people, but they don't want to go all in with them, possibly because they're worried about losing more of that land. So I felt like that was an interesting sort of commentary on like the hill people as they're called, like
Yeah,
genuine hill people, who like have lived here for a while, and the effects of capitalism are becoming more like apparent to them. Uh,
yeah.
so yeah, that was an interesting part.
I think something that should be said about the whole movie, it feels like you're in Matewan 1920s, because it just the lighting of the movie, the maybe the editing too, but the music of the movie, especially, and the way that it's lit, both of these really set the mood and set the tone for this place in West Virginia, and really gives it a folksy, um, feel that you would expect from 100 years ago, or 60 years ago when it was made. Um, in the in the hills, and I really liked that element of it. It felt very Americana in that respect. And yeah, just kind of made me a bit nostalgic for home. Um, yeah, so that's something that I really enjoyed, not related to the plot, but I did want to mention that. I don't know if you felt the same way about the cinematography, but I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I thought it was a beautiful movie that really captured this sort of small town life.
Yeah. Anyway, the pigs are on the prowl, rooting out potential avenues of distress and disharmony. And they have told the subleaser that Joe called her a slut, whore, bitch, cunt, etc. That is easy to get in bed with,
Hmm.
and she believes them,
Yeah,
and then
she had a thing for him too.
yeah, so she's very emotional and sensitive about this. This kind of gets out. Other kinds of lies get out too, and then these two cartoon characters are like laughing about what they've done, and the younger son or brother or something, Danny, the
Hmm.
preacher, hears it, and then they threaten him to toe the line, step in line,
Yeah,
and then yeah,
it's very interesting kind of like slowly spiraling out of control situation because we learn that CE is on the side of the company men at this point. A betrayer, awful class traitor and whatnot. And then
mm,
like they tell this woman who loved Joe, that or like starts to really like Joe, that he's been bad mouthing her, and then they find out all about this plot about how they're going to try to get Joe killed. But what's really interesting is the scene where like they're drawing straws, and Few Clothes, James Earl Jones, is tasked with trying to kill Joe, but at the same time, Danny is preaching before the um, before the before the
mm,
at church, and the union men are there, or sorry, the company men are there in order to prevent Danny from telling people that about the plot against Joe. But what
yeah,
but that this is all interesting because the company men are so self-interested and don't give a shit about religion or don't understand the norms of the city in which they are in.
yeah,
They can't understand that the story that Danny is trying to tell is related to the union in some way.
yeah.
He's trying.
They're cackling like idiots while Danny's preaching gospel.
One of them takes out their gun at church and points it at a lady and is just laughing about it. And it's very silly, but like very, yeah, like these people don't consider the town people to be on their level. So of course they're just going to play around and goof around in church.
Mm, yeah, but yeah, Danny's message is basically like to is very coded to let people know what's really going on, and what those two are about, and what lies have been spread, and can can we trust this guy, Joe? Wink, wink, hint, hint. And some of the union men are at church, and they send a young guy out to basically stop Few Clothes from doing what needs to be done. He goes rushing out to the encampment when Few Clothes and Joe are like, "Oh, I heard a noise. Let's go find out what it is." Eh, Joe, let me follow you. Although I don't think Few Clothes ever wanted to do it. I think he was like always trusting of Joe. So if it had been anybody else, probably, Joe would have been got before Few Clothes could get the word out, get the word from the guy. Uh, I believe there's a fire next.
Yeah, yeah. I like the fact that like a Few Clothes and Joe just share a laugh. Joe doesn't know what was about to happen, and
Oh
Few
yeah,
Clothes
yeah,
is just
yeah.
like, my goodness, I'm glad I don't have to do this. But yeah, like they learn that CE has basically been the betrayer. They burned down his restaurant, and the sheriff doesn't really like do anything about it because he's just as mad.
He's
Uh,
morally correct in this moment. Yes, he's based.
Yeah, and then they continue with union things, but that like Danny and a friend go poking and prodding around the company stuff, and at that point the company men and CE show up and murder this young union boy. in cold blood. They ask him for names, and like the Union boy is hesitant at first, but then he just says a couple names, and CE's like, "Oh, just kill him." And you think like, "Oh, he ratted out some people and was killed for it," but as CE says, like those are the names of 5 people who died in the in a company disaster a few years ago. So
Yep.
defiant to the end, which is a bold stand there.
Hell yeah. That was a good one. That was a really powerful scene. Danny there hiding under the rail behind the railroad or the rail and the train, I guess. Uh, that's what it was, right? He was hiding behind something or
The
like a
train, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, they were mocking him for pissing himself and shitting himself, as anybody would. But yeah, him giving names of people who died just trying to work. Nice. Didn't matter to any of those people. Maybe C.E. Lively felt a pang of regret that he's a traitor, but I doubt it.
And they
Didn't,
hold the funeral at that point, and that's where the line that I really connected with comes into play, where it's like, like this kid died, and like, yeah, I know you want your union, but most of us can't see past this holler. So,
yeah, that
um,
was a good one. That was really powerful. Uh, I do believe after that, more people show up to help the capitalists, and there's meant to be a face-to-face discussion. It's also really weird. They're like those guys are creeping into the city, into the town with their guns, just out in the open. Like, we're not playing anymore. We're gonna kill you all.
yeah, like they basically have like an eviction notice, which the sheriff points out
Yeah,
still probably doesn't really carry any weight. But again, like everyone is on the company's side, like the people in power. So
yeah.
they can kill you and nothing will ever be done about it.
They
Uh,
can, yeah. I guess they could just have everybody killed and then bring in scabs to work and say, "Hey, you want to stay here? It's a company town. If they own everything." I guess that's the idea. Like the sheriff would have to be killed too. But what's anybody gonna do?
mhm.
um, anyway, this Joe comes running in trying to stop the fight, and the sight of Joe uh, turns the turns the tide toward murder, and it turns into an epic gunfight where, sadly, the common folk do suffer losses, but thankfully, the pigs uh, get roasted like barbecue, especially the fucking one that was chortling all the time. He gets blasted by the subleaser woman, which was awesome and dope as hell.
She kills him with the
But
shotgun when she's sort of hiding behind the laundry, which is an
yep,
amazing way to do it. Like he looks at her like with a sigh of relief, like, oh, this woman won't do anything, but she does a thing. um, it,
yeah, that
it's
was
pretty
awesome.
cool.
And then Danny let the other one free, I think, or some guy free.
Hmm.
I think it was the other one, right? The rabid dog that was like constantly saying, "I'll kill any of you." I think it was him, right? Or was it just
Yeah.
another shooter? Yeah. Uh, I know he's a godly man, but Danny, bro, what are you doing? Just, it's the morally correct thing to do. God will forgive you.
Yeah, but that it's still like the inner anguish that he must feel is like, yes, it's justified, but I don't want to become that type of person. Uh,
Not all of us can be based. That's okay, Danny.
Unfortunately, we see that Joe has died for his
Mm.
cause, uh, which sucks. It's
Yeah.
it's not good. And then we find out that the company later, came back and killed the sheriff, and it was quite a big fight, uh,
Yep.
a huge struggle. And the movie just sort of ends there.
Yeah, with I guess older Danny, I would assume, giving the epilogue of sorts to explain what happened. Joe was buried there and the sheriff got killed. There was a big fight and et cetera, et cetera. And then it
Hmm.
just ends.
Hmm. Yeah, we needed a bit of a better resolution, but
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty powerful, and it didn't try to, clean up everything into a neat bow. It really showed that, like in Dubious Battle, that this is a huge struggle. Sometimes the company wins, but you still have to
Yeah.
continue the fight, because if you
Yeah.
don't, then this is just going to keep happening every single time. There's going to be continued
Yeah.
exploitation.
Constant vigilance in class war, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's one nice thing to say about the ending is that um, this is definitely a movie where okay, it doesn't have a nice, clear cut ending because the struggle is ongoing, and the movie doesn't resolve because the struggle has not resolved. I don't know if that's actually what the intention was. That's maybe pulling at strings here, but probably actually is pulling at strings, I would say. But yeah, it would have been nice to have a more solid ending in terms of a film. But if that's all there was to really say, I guess, yeah, pretty good overall. Ending was just kind of like you kind of you're in that moment, a moment of stasis, like you've driven off of the cliff. You're Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner, and you've run off the cliff, and you just started to look down and realize that there's nothing beneath you. That's a way out there metaphor. It doesn't make sense, but it's just like it feels like that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's over. But
I told you after I watched it, like, oh, this was very depressing. Um,
yeah,
but most movies don't even try to talk about this type of subject, especially these
mm,
days, and aren't that this honest with what the company, what the government is capable of
yeah.
doing to the people.
I feel like there would be movie. I mean, I don't know. I don't watch every American movie made, or haven't watched them, or a huge number of them anyway. But I feel like probably what would happen if this kind of movie was made today would be like, okay, the capitalists would maybe be portrayed the same, probably, uh, but the like Chris Cooper's character would maybe do the same kind of stuff. They would definitely hit home hard on the fact that we will abandon you if this is a lost cause. Like that would definitely be to show like, oh, these guys are just as bad.
Hmm.
Uh, and also like Joe would have actually called the girl, the woman, a bitch, horse, slut, cunt. That is easy to get with. Like they would just make him seem actually like a bad person to both sides it.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Uh,
there is a nice subtlety or honesty, I guess, to the way that it's Joe is portrayed and everything is done in the movie.
hmm. Yeah. So ultimately, I thought it was pretty good movie. Great acting, but again, as you noted earlier, they don't give some of the characters a lot to work with. Like I feel like they
Mm.
could have used James Earl Jones and Mary McDonnell and all these other fabulous like character actors
Yeah,
in a much more effective manner. That like the script is there. It's just like you're not.
yeah.
There's more acting to be done, I think.
I would have enjoyed less Danny actually. I mean, when he's preaching, that's fine, but I thought he was the weakest actor. I guess he's also the youngest, but Like the guy that got killed, I thought he was a really good actor. Maybe if he could have been acting for Danny, no offense to the actor, he did a decent job, but I don't know. Sometimes I just felt like he was like I could see that he was acting, whereas the others I did feel like they are that person. Um, just
That's
my
fair.
thought.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I guess another question that you usually ask is, which character did you relate to here?
Well, I'm not part of a union. I have not done any organizing, so I can't really say Joe. Uh, I'm not a godly man, and I probably would have done what needed to be done, unlike Danny. Uh, Actually, maybe not. um, I'm not like the subleaser. I am cartoonishly evil, but I'm
I see it.
uh, yeah. Maybe I feel like I would it's kind of hard to say because I don't know if I really relate to anybody. I've not This is very much outside of my own experience, but I would like to think I would be like the hopefully I wouldn't get killed early and young, but I would like to think that I would be defiant to the end, like the guy that was killed. So that's who I'm gonna say, because ever ever since I watched The Wire, my life philosophy has been fuck the bosses.
Mm-hmm. Fuck the bosses.
So uh, yeah, I think maybe I relate to him the most in a because I'm kind of defiant. And I would like to think if I was in this situation, I would be defiant to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that I identify with a cross between James Earl Jones and um, uh, Few Clothes and Joe, because I am a union man. But it's always difficult to know like how much effort to really give in these situations, and also grappling with the consequences of doing that sort of thing. It does weigh heavily on me, and it weighs heavily on Joe here as well. I'm not doing anything that necessarily constitutes the calling in of the National Guard and possibly getting shot at. You never know, especially with the next administration, but um,
Sure.
it's um, it's a struggle and it's a constant fight, and I'm ready to participate in that fight. Um,
Mm.
I'd like to think that I'd give my life, but I'll never be asked to actually do that. So it's impossible to say for sure. But Joe is I saw myself in Joe when I was watching this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a morally righteous guy. I would like to think I could be like him, but I'm not in a union. I have the same sentiments at heart, but I've no skill in organization or anything like that. Otherwise, I might have chosen him because I do relate to him on that level of like wanting all workers to be respected and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've never organized or been part of a union, so I would have to say the other guy instead.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I have about the movie. Everything I want
Yeah,
to say.
pretty solid for me. As you know, carnies in WWE once upon a time used to say a solid B plus player. I said that wrong, but it's a solid B plus movie for me.
Hmm.
Is the point?
Yeah.
B plus, yeah,
I do think as you said earlier, it is a hidden gem, something that kind of gets lost as time goes on, but is
yeah,
still worth watching from time to
definitely.
time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even the cartoonish guys, like they're literally just what it's like revealing what the capitalist actually is behind the facade. Like they've taken the mask of civility off and they're doing the deed. Disco Elysium reference. I butchered it a little bit, but anyway, that leaves the recommendation for December,
Lucas,
or our
Lucas,
Jan.
what are you having us watch for this next month? I am excited to find out.
Well, given that I've had some unfortunate downturns in my life in the past 3 weeks, I can't even. It feels like months uh, since it happened, and it's only been 2 weeks and 5 days as of the recording of this. But it feels like literal months, up to a year that since then. Uh, so I've been feeling pretty down, and I thought, you know what? Whenever I'm feeling a bit grim, whenever I'm feeling upset, I return to one director to just shock my system, to rock my world. And we are going to be watching David Lynch's Elephant Man.
No. Oh my goodness. This is I was not I think when you said shock my system, I kind of grasped it and now I'm afraid.
This is why. Say what you want to say.
I've like for those who don't know, I Lucas made me watch Eraserhead one time and I've never been the same.
This is this is the original movie recommendation, I believe. Yeah, I think I watched that 5 years ago, and I was like, Mr. Nothing, Mr. Nothing, Mr. Nothing, you have to watch this. And you have never been the same. That is one of the best comedies of all time. I will hear nothing else.
It's real
But
doozy. I
I
don't know
didn't
what
want,
to
yeah.
expect from Elephant Man, but it should be
I
cute.
kind of want to watch it again, but maybe when I become a father, that will be much more relatable. But I figured Elephant Man has, I believe it has a romance element to it or some kind of love story to it. And certainly that has gone downhill for me. So I wanted to feel the pain, basically, or feel the love. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't have that. But I've heard good things about it. I think I watched it when I was way too young because I have visions of it in my head, uh, which possibly explains why I am the way I am.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I actually think I watched Eraserhead as a child too, because some of those scenes that you see, like when I was watching it for the first time, possibly, I was just thinking, like, I don't know if I've just seen pictures of this on the internet or I'm having a memory right now because this feels way too real. But I'm hoping for a very similar experience of horror and comedy, but hopefully also something. I've heard it has some sweet element to it. So hopefully it won't be as scarring as Eraserhead. But this is why I said I am a cartoonishly villainous person.
Of course, obviously. Yeah, an interesting choice. So be on the lookout for that in December. Some David Lynch gloriousness. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the video. It was great talking with you about Matewan.
Yeah.
Pretty solid movie. That might just be a B plus. But yeah, it's we've come to the end of this. So, if you have any thoughts about what we said here, or you've seen this movie before and you want to, leave a comment, do so below. We would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, not only to this channel, but to Lucas's Strike the Sun MD for more interesting thoughts about video games or movies or stuff like that. Also, join the Discord, which there's a link to in the description if you want to have further conversations about other such things like that. And until then, we wish you the best of luck in your weird and comrade based travels. Farewell and fight the power.
Farewell.